It's a great honor to be with you. And as Rabbi Gold just said, technology allows us to unite in unique ways. There's nothing greater than honoring a neshama, a soul, a sacred soul, especially one that has done so much good in this world. So Kaddish. What is Kaddish? It's one of the most hallowed and solemn prayers in Judaism. I would even say the most solemn one. We say it every day, many times. People who are grieving or mourning over their loved ones say it. We all have the visions and we have the memories of it being said in the most tragic moments. We always sanctified souls by saying Kaddish. But it seems to be a very mysterious prayer, because nowhere does it mention at all the departed, the name of the departed, their memory, their legacy, their history. So it seemed like if someone heard Kaddish for the first time, they say, why are we saying Kaddish? Why are we sanctifying God's name? And telling us how exalted and how hallowed God's name is. Yiskadol v'yiskadash shmei Rabbo. So one of the first sources that we find for the power of Kaddish is actually a very ancient Midrash that tells us a story about Rabbi Akiva. This Midrash is cited in many different places. The Rebbe cites it actually when he finished saying Kaddish on the Rebbetzin, Chaim Mushka, in the year 1989. And it's a very touching and powerful story. Rabbi Akiva, the Midrash tells us, was in a cemetery. We don't know why, but he was in a cemetery. And he sees a strange sight. He sees a man covered in charcoal black, hurrying about, chopping down wood, and collecting and gathering it. He goes over to the man and says to him, what are you doing? And the man says, I need to go. He says, what's your story? If you're a pauper, I'll help pray that you become wealthy. If you're a slave to a master, I'll help free you. And the man says, please leave me alone, because those that have sent me here may get upset and I need to be there on time with the wood. Rabbi Akiva, of course, did not let go. He goes over to the man and says, what is your story? Who are you? And he says, I'm a man from another world. I'm not from the living. I lived a very tragic life, very cruel life, and now I am paying back for all that I've done. And one of my punishments is that I need to gather this wood, and every night I am punished on the wood, on the fire of the wood that turns me charcoal black. Rabbi Akiva, being Rabbi Akiva, of course, the lover of Jews, V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, Rabbi Akiva said, this klal gadol b'Torah, the fundamental principle of Torah. So Rabbi Akiva says to him, and have they told you? Is there any way for you to redeem yourself? So he says, yes, but it's too late for me. What is the way? What have they told you? He said that if I had a child and that child said Kaddish and people would respond, Amen, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mavarach La'ol Mamal Ma'i Yisbarach, that would redeem me. But I don't think I have a child. When I died, my wife was pregnant. I don't know if she gave birth. So he says, who are you? What's your name? He said, my name is Ukba. My wife's name is Shashiva. And we come from a city called Lanuka'a. Lanuka'a. Rabbi Akiva says, okay. He goes to the city and starts asking around, does anybody know an Ukba? And they begins hearing curses. Ukba, may his bones be grinded. What about Shashiva? May she be cursed forever. They were hated because they were very cruel people, and the city hated them. And he said, did they have a child? Yes, they had a child, but we've rejected the child. We've thrown the child away. Where's this child? Where can I find him? Rabbi Akiva went and sought him out and found him and saw that he had no education. He wasn't even circumcised. So he circumcised him. This is all the Midrash, quoting straight from the Midrash. He circumcised him and began teaching him Aleph Beis, because he had no Hebrew, to be able to say Kaddish for his father. It didn't work. So Rabbi Akiva said, I'm going to fast 40 fasts. A voice from heaven said, what do you want? He says, I guarantee this boy, I want you to let me teach him Hebrew so he can say Kaddish. And then that was allowed. He took him to a minyan. He said Kaddish, and people answered, Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah. And from then on, Ukba was freed. That night, the Midrash concludes, Rabbi Akiva had a dream. Ukba came to the dream with tears in his eyes. I said, thank you. You've redeemed me. This is the power of Kaddish, the power of a child. Now, of course, in this case, it was a tragic case. When you're talking about an neshama that has done great good deeds. So the Arizal says something interesting. He says, mistake people make is that Kaddish is only to redeem from iniquities, to cleanse us from sins. No, that's a mistake. Kaddish helps elevate a soul from one level to the next level. So why is it that we don't mention the name of the deceased? Why don't we mention his neshama, his family, anything? Because the greatest response to death is Yiskadel v'Yiskadel Shmei Rabbah. Everybody thinks, how can we beat death? What answers do we have? We have no answers when death strikes. Even the great Moshe Rabbeinu shuddered when he heard the word death. There's no words. There's no explanation. How can you beat death? The only way, Kaddish teaches us an immortal lesson. You want to reach a place of true life, you have to go back to the source of life. So as much as we would remember the departed soul, as much of the good deeds, it's still mortal. You want to really reach eternity, you have to go back to the eternal source of life. So we say, Yiskadel v'Yiskadel Shmei Rabbah. That's the true comfort. That it transcends life and death. It goes to a place that's beyond birth and beyond death, the source of it all. And when a child, like in the case of Rabbi Akiva, who appreciated, understood this power, when a child says it, he's invoking the eternal power of life in this world. And there's no greater consolation than that. So we say Kaddish, and children say Kaddish. Now we're coming to the yahrzeit. This is the yahrzeit of Shmuel Yaakov Fink, Olav Hashalom. And the children have said, each one who said Kaddish, if they said them all throughout, over 5,500 times they said Kaddish. And all that elevates the soul. Every Kaddish elevates it to another level and a higher level. So when you're talking about such a beautiful soul, and what I've heard about him, the deeds that he did, and especially the ones that no one knew about, then there's no question that Kaddish is the greatest way to immortalize Shmuel's neshama. And not just immortalize it, but make it a real living life in this world as he lives on. As Rabbi Gold mentioned, Mazayir b'chaim, afu b'chaim. As his children are alive, he is alive. And especially knowing what kind of legacy he left. So we connect to the eternal source of our life through Kaddish. And I look forward in a few moments to share more as we talk about eternal life and the resurrection of the dead. We're honoring a yahrzeit, and a yahrzeit of a very special soul, as we've just all heard. It's always difficult to talk in times like this, even if you're not a relative, even if you're not personally a personal friend, because the loss of any neshama beguf, any soul in the body, is the loss for all of us. And we are all one organism, part of one larger reality. And indeed, a loss is not just a loss for each one of us, it's also a loss for God in a certain way, kavyachol, so to speak. So, how does Judaism deal with this unfathomable, literally unfathomable abyss called death? You find in society all types of approaches. Everybody wants to find the fountain of youth, to find eternal life. The pharaohs of old tried to do it through their methods of embalmment, the pyramids, and so on. You have modern times cryogenic freezing, and even the cosmetics industry in a certain way, Botox, and so on, trying to beat aging, mortality. No one has been successful, obviously. So what is the Jewish approach? We know the most powerful phrase related to a passing and a yahrzeit is V'hachayit na libay, mentioned earlier. A verse in the book of Ecclesiastes, Kehelis, Shlomo Melech, V'hachayit na libay, and the living shall take to heart. When you think about it, that contains tremendous lessons. The living, meaning us, beginning with the family, Mrs. Fink, all the beautiful children, all family, all friends, and all of us gathered here, and frankly, even those not gathered here. V'achai, the living shall take to heart. Do not ignore. Do not go into denial. Don't avoid it. Take it to heart. In the literal sense, that means to be more introspective, soul-searching. It's a time for accountability. It's a time for looking inside our own hearts and souls to see where do we stand. But if you think about it, it's even deeper than that. V'chayit nelibe means it gives us an opportunity to think about life itself. As they say, sometimes the eclipse of the sun teaches us more about sunlight than regular light does. So when there's an eclipse and there's a passing and a soul moves on to its next stage in life, it's a time to think about life, the beginning of life. And why are we here? What is our purpose? I'll never forget when the Rebbe mourned and grieved for his Rebbetzin, Chaim Mushka. The year was 1988. Chav Beishvat, the Rebbetzin, passed away. The lifelong partner, the daughter of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the wife of the Rebbe. What struck me, I remember, was something that was very uncharacteristic. The Rebbe was very discreet, very private. When his mother passed away, Rebbe Tzachana, in 1964, Vav Tishrei, I was a little kid, but I heard from many, it was very discreet. The Rebbe didn't talk about it openly that much. You didn't see much emotion. Obviously, internally, we did see, but not on an external level. When it came in 1988, by stark contrast, it couldn't have been more obvious. The Rebbe saying Kaddish every day, davening for her every day, 3 times a day, moving his whole operation from 770 to his house on President Street. There was a change in virtually every aspect of the Rebbe's life and teachings. Farbrengens changed. The Rebbe stopped saying Hasidic discourses. I'm not going to go through a list of everything, but it was a dramatic change. And it was clear that the Rebbe wanted us to see it. Every Farbrengen, V'achayit nelibe, the living shall take to heart. I always wondered why suddenly the Rebbe felt that need to express it. I remember at the end of the Shloshim, 30 days after the passing of the Rebbetzin, that heart-wrenching talk the Rebbe gave that Shabbos. It was Pasha Kisisa about Parah Aduma. And I was literally crying and saying that even Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moshe, shuddered, trembled when he was exposed to death. And he said to God, Bametei tarase, how will we ever purify from that? And the Rebbe asked the question, we know God giveth, God taketh. Just like God gave purifications for other impurities, He can give one for this as well. We can heal from this as well, from death. The Rebbe responded, and you can see he was talking about himself, that even though Moshe was Chachma Vatzilus, meaning he had the ultra wisdom, understood the divine plan, and he understood that every Yerida, every descent brings to a greater ascent, and there's a bigger picture, and there's Tchias HaMesim, and the soul lives on. Us mortals, you can say, we cry because we don't see the bigger picture, but he knew the bigger picture. And he knew everything that it says in Chassidus about the soul's eternity. And yet, he shuddered. Why? Because when you face death, and you see even a small disconnect, even though you know the soul lives on, that is cause for pain. And even Moshe was at loss for words. He needed God directly and personally to console him. You could see the Rebbe was speaking that even though intellectually you can understand, but emotionally there's a void and a vacuum. And that disconnect, even for a second, that the material body that was joined together with the soul and lived a life, a beautiful life, even for 1 second disconnect, means there's some type of spiritual and divine concealment. But then, when my father passed away, I had an epiphany, a very powerful one. I realized that the Rebbe, like a true Rebbe, was giving us guidance. He wanted us to see. This is my own thought. He wanted us to see that even a great Rebbe, as connected as he is, cries as well. And gave us guidance, not just for the good times, but also when it's difficult. And we can learn much from that. I am in it with you. Obviously in a completely different level, and we can't compare ourselves. But still, and I gained so much consolation and strength from saying, I'm walking through those footsteps that the Rebbe walked. Not comparing again, but still some strength. And I want to say this particularly to the Fink family. That's where we get strength in times when we don't have answers. Not that we'll find an answer, but we get power. We may not have answers, as one Hasidic Rebbe once told a grieving individual. I may not have answers for you, but I can cry with you. And that gives strength and power. So what do we learn about true life? How does our approach, the Torah Jewish approach, teach us something about life that we don't learn except when we're faced with a passing? So let me share a personal story. Many years ago, I was invited to speak at a yard site. It was in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I was being driven in a minivan. And I was thinking about what am I going to say exactly. I always find myself lost of words because I don't want to get up there and pontificate and give all kinds of thoughts and ideas. People are suffering. There's a deep void, a hole inside the person's heart and soul. So I always know the expression, the Baal Shem Tov says, everything is a lesson in life. So I said to myself, let me look around for the signs. No pun intended. And I saw a sign. I'm traveling up the West Side Highway to the Upper West Side, and I see a big billboard. The billboard was an ad for Newport cigarettes. I know you may say, what does that have to do with anything? Just bear with me. Newport cigarettes. A couple, those beautiful faces, smiling, beaming, young, vibrant, and the whitest teeth you've ever seen. And it says, alive with pleasure. That's the ad. And of course, there's that prerequisite box in the bottom left that says smoking kills or something like that. Of course, the bizarre paradox of all, and irony. And yet, they spend billions of dollars on advertising because people either ignore the boxes, they see the beautiful faces. And I said to myself, and this became a thought that I shared at that yard site. I said to myself, here's the perfect lesson. Here's the perfect lesson. Alive, not just alive, with pleasure. Why? Because everybody wants to look like this young couple. But how much Photoshop went into making those pictures look so beautiful? Is that really the color of the teeth of smokers? Do we have an x-ray of their lungs? No, but it looks right. As in Madison Avenue marketing, they say, it doesn't matter what happened, it matters what people think happened. And lahavdil, stark contrast. We're just coming from Parsha Vayechi, literally this past Shabbos. And you read Vayechi, the name of the chapter is lived. Who lived? Vayakov lived. And we're talking about Yaakov, Shmuel Yaakov. Yaakov lived. So you think the name of a chapter, like the name of a book or the name of a chapter, should reflect on what that chapter has to say. Well, lo and behold, you read a sentence or two. Immediately it says that he lived, yes, he lived 17 years in Mitzrayim. And immediately it starts talking about his preparations for death. How he calls his children and he gives the blessings and everything, all the promises, and calls in Joseph where he should be buried. Why would that's called truth in advertising, so to speak? A name of a chapter that's supposed to talk about life, that's the name of it, and it talks about the opposite of life. You want to name a chapter the life of Yaakov? We have chapters galore before that. We have Vayigash, we have Miketz, we have Vayeshev, we have Vayishlach, we have Vayetze when he's born. Of all chapters, the one that's chosen, that's called Life of Yaakov, or Life, is the passing of Yaakov. Now there's a similar question, and the same thing with Chayei Sarah. You go to the chapter Chayei Sarah, this is the year, the life of Sarah. So you would think, okay, we're going to hear about her life. No. She lived 127 years and she passed away. And we talk about how Avram goes and buys a burial plot and how he grieves after her and then sends a messenger to go find a shidduch to continue the legacy for his son Yitzchak. There's a story of life of Sarah is the chapter or two before that. And the Rebbe gives this most powerful answer. You want to know when someone's truly alive? You don't look when they're breathing, when their heart is beating and their mind is working, and they have people who they influence, and maybe memorable and beautiful things that they've done. That's living on a certain level. That's called biological life. Maybe more than biological life. It could be also emotional and intellectual life. You want to know when someone's truly alive? Look at the day when they're no longer here physically. Are they remembered? Or do they want to, or people want to forget them? There were great monarchs in history. When they were in power, everyone trembled before them. And the moment they're gone, nobody wants to remember them. And lahavdil, Sarah, not only is she remembered the day after by Avram and Yitzchak, here 3,500 years later, we talk about Sarah like she's living with us. We talk about Yaakov like he's one of ours. Yaakov, Avinu, our father Yaakov. That's true life. That's the real litmus test of life. When you see what happens afterwards. So, I hope I won't be sued by Newport cigarettes, but with all due respect to them, yes, alive with pleasure. It's not alive and not pleasure. It's external, superficial, selling something. But that's what we buy into. We think that's called life. You ask a doctor, what's life? He'll tell you the biological definition of life. You ask the Torah, what is life? Life is the influence, the legacy. What impact did you leave? There are powerful people in history and we don't even know that they existed. We don't have their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I speak very often to audiences and I say, who's the greatest philosopher in the Western world? They say Aristotle. The greatest English writer, Shakespeare. The greatest artist, okay, Rembrandt. You have different arguments. Musician, Beethoven, Bach. Not getting into which one. I said, let me ask you something. Do they have any children? Did they have any children? People start saying, 1 second, let me Google that. Wikipedia. What about grandchildren, great-grandchildren? They may have left beautiful art and music and literature and thoughts and ideas. Where are their children? We don't even know if they had children. If it was so vital to life, why didn't they teach it to their children? Come Avram Avinu, who was a greater philosopher perhaps than all of them. And what is the greatest tribute we say? He did not take his philosophy, and he was a great philosopher and thinker, and of course, a pioneer of social justice, of tzedakah. That was not the essence. By him, if he does not leave a family and a legacy and children that will continue the path of tzedakah and mishpat, that's not called living. It means, yes, he's alive and he could be powerful and very influential. Living means mazari b'chaim, afu b'chaim, literally. The children continue and live on and pass on and perpetuate the teachings, the life, the nobility, the virtue of their parents. And then he too is alive. That's the definition of true life. So if you want to conquer death, the way is not to find another mortal response to achieve immortality. You need to bring into your life something that's immortal, and that is the soul's contribution to this world that never dies, because a neshama never dies. There's a very powerful statement from the Baal Shem Tov. It talks about consolation, comfort, nechama. That there are three ways we grieve, and three stages of grief after the passing of a loved one. One is silence. The immediate reaction is usually shock, such utter shock. The second is tears, where we at least can express, we feel, and we express ourselves through tears. And then the third one is the most interesting. He says, melody, a song. A song is a form of comfort. And when the Baal Shem Tov was asked song, we don't understand silence. Silence captures the inscrutability and the impossibility to understand what death is about. Tears, of course, is another form of grief. But how does a song? A song seems to be more of an uplifting thing. And the Baal Shem Tov answered, because every human being doesn't just sing a song, it is a song. He's a walking, talking melody. So when we sing, and of course in the right stage, in the right time, what we're saying is that the melody, the unique song, the unique melody of this person's soul does not cease. So we continue to sing and perpetuate his song. Every one of us has a unique song, and perhaps many songs. Very often it's trapped within us. But then there are people we see clearly that they've sung their melody, and they've touched many people, knowing or unknowing. Many times, as I hear again about Shmuel, Rab Shmuel Fink, that many things he did, but probably we still don't even know all his chesed due to his personality. But these were all songs, and they left lasting impact. And we continue singing that song. So when you think of it that way, it's a whole new take on life and death. Yes, death is terrifying. We are all terrified of death. But we understand with our minds, and this is what Chassidus teaches us, that life does not begin when the soul enters his body, and it doesn't end when the soul leaves the body. I, as many rabbis I'm sure, are asked the question, where does the soul go to after 120 years? Where does it go to? And I've always been a loss of words over the years. What do you answer? How do you answer that question? Then I just had one day, I just thought a thought. And I came up with this, I guess you can say, somewhat silly analogy. But bear with me for a moment. Type of dialogue, an imaginary dialogue between a refrigerator and electricity. And here's the dialogue. The refrigerator says to the electricity, tell me, where do you go to when they pull the plug? When the plug of the refrigerator is pulled, where do you, the electricity, go to? The electricity responds incredulously, what kind of chutzpah? What do you mean, where I go to? You're a little box that they just invented a century ago, 2 centuries ago. In some way, they generate me the electricity. They get it contained in this box called the refrigerator, and I refrigerate and cool food. And now you think you're the center of the universe. You're it, and you ask me where I go. The whole question is based on a false premise. You think you're the center of existence, and you ask where I go. I go back where I always was before you were even created or invented. I go back to a place that's beyond time and space as you can understand it. You only see things through your little box. So it's not about finding an answer, it's like a whole different perspective. That's when we start learning about neshama. We hear right in the beginning of the Torah, what does it describe a human being? We don't say a human being is just a flesh and blood, an intelligent or emotional creature. Tselem Elokim, a divine image. God took a clump of earth, of clay, vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, and he imbued it. He breathed into it. A life, a living life. That's why neshama, which means soul, comes from the same root as neshima, breath. It's God's breath. The living breath of God that makes the soul come alive. I should correct that the soul's life then gives life even to a lifeless piece of clay, of earth. And that's the human being. So why would one think that when that energy flow leaves the box, the electricity leaves the refrigerator, everything stops? Nothing stops. It's just not seen and experienced and felt on a sensory level by the box, in this case the body. So it's our own myopic vision, it's our own narrow vision, that we only see the here and now. So the soul doesn't go anywhere. The soul is right here with us as we gather, especially when we're talking about a yard site of a beautiful soul, is with us right now. We just don't relate to those dimensions. Just like you don't relate to your soul right now within you. Where is that soul? You think if you open somebody up, you'll find a soul in there, like a heart? Where is exactly the soul? We have to then relate to things that are a little more sublime, transcend time and space, and yet they occupy time and space. Here's not the place to go into how that works, the dynamics, but that's what Chassidus teaches. So it is somewhat of a connection of two opposites. The immortal soul connecting to a mortal body. And not just connecting, in a seamless fashion. But what does this teach us? What true life is really about. What true life is really about. And here's something that First time you may hear it, it sounds almost like, this is fantastical, but it's actually quite revolutionary. For us, we see death as part of reality. Everybody dies. Life, by definition, we age, we wither, we deteriorate, and I say we, I mean all of nature, everything in this world, and then finally it perishes. Material world doesn't have any substance that gives it anything eternal. It lasts as long as it lasts. And then death comes. However, if you look in the Torah, and you don't need to go into the deepest mystical teachings, you'll find something that's completely wrong. Death is actually an aberration from nature. Because here's the simple, obvious question. When you have gas in your car, at some point the gas runs out, you got to refill. When you have electricity flow, okay, it's a lot more than gas. If you're generating electricity from some source, you probably have more, but it also has limits. But a soul is a divine force, the breath of God. It never runs out of energy. So why should there be death in the first place? If the energy of the soul imbues the body, why should there be death? The soul's not running out of energy. Think of it like this, a cup of water. We're not considering the issue of evaporation. If the cup is intact and the water is in the cup, the water will never run out of the cup. Why would it? But there lies the answer. That's as long as the cup is intact. That's as long as the body is intact. If the machine called the body of life, the body of a human being, is intact, then the soul can continue giving it life forever. Problem is, what happens if the body gets punctured? And I don't mean physically necessary, physically as well, but also spiritually, psychologically, emotionally. What is an avera, a sin? We translate a sin. It's not the right translation. It actually creates a lot of misleading stereotypes. An avera comes from the word havara, displacement. It's moved. It's misaligned. If your machine, take any machine, is behaving in a way that is not functioning properly, what's going to happen? The machine begins to break down, and the energy that's within the machine will have no choice but to be removed. So it's not the problem on the energy level, on the neshama level, the problem is on the body level. When Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, ate from the tree of knowledge, they punctured the body. The body was no longer aligned with the soul's mission. That's why God comes into the Garden of Eden, as the Alter Rebbe said famously to the minister when he was arrested, the story of Yutas Kislev, and he asked him, what means Ayeka? God says to Adam HaRishon, who was hiding in the garden after the sin, Ayeka, where are you? Doesn't know where he is. God doesn't know where Adam is. So the Alter Rebbe ultimately answers, that's the immortal question asked to every human being. Where are you? I don't recognize you. It's like you're sitting near somebody and they space out. You know where they're physically, but you ask them, where are you? Where's your spirit? Where's your heart? Where's your presence? You're not present. I don't recognize the divine image in which you were created. Your behavior is not aligned with what your soul was sent for. Of the Lashamra, you've wandered away, you've betrayed yourself. And as a result, what does the Torah say? If you had not done that, you would have lived forever had you eaten from the tree of life and not from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But now that you have eaten from it, you have imposed upon yourself, not as punishment, cause and effect. You have disconnected yourself from the source of life. So it'll last for a while, but it won't last forever. So in that context, death is an aberration. It's a result of misbehavior, of a misalignment. And therefore, when we say Tchias HaMesim, resurrection, everyone thinks, wow, that's like an unbelievable miracle. Says the Talmud, no. The Talmud says, if God could create something from nothing, he definitely can create something from something. Meaning, if something that didn't exist now comes into existence, he definitely can take something that existed, means life of the soul and body in this world, and resurrect it, because he's not doing something new. He's renewing something that was there. There was a book a number of years ago called, I believe, The Science of Resurrection. And they talk about DNA, which never dies. And hypothetically, it's still science fiction, but conceptually, many scientists will admit it's possible that you may be able to revive the DNA with the right tools and the right technologies and so on. Why? Because today we know that matter and energy are reversible. E equals mc squared from the good old Jew Einstein, which basically stated nothing dies. Nothing dies. It just changes form. The classic example, a simple example. Take water, liquid water. You freeze it, it becomes ice. You heat it, it becomes gas. Now, you may not see the gas, but you can bottle it, and you can reverse this process many times. When you put wood in a fireplace, and the wood is consumed and becomes fuel, it's turned into fire. And even when the fire burns out, the energy remains somewhere. You may not be able to bottle it, you may not be able to contain it. Nothing can be destroyed, because everything is either matter or energy. If matter is just another form of energy. And the Rebbe uses this analogy, actually. So the soul contained a certain garment. That garment is the human body. And then it removes that garment and takes on another garment, a more sublime, a more subtle, a more spiritual garment. Now, of course, the more sublime and spiritual we are, the more we can relate to it. Famous story with the Rebbe Rashab. He was playing Rebbe Chassid with his brother Razor, Rab Zalman Adon. So they would always copy what your father. His father was the Rebbe. So Razor would play Chassid. Comes in one day to the Rebbe Rashab. They're both children. The Rebbe Rashab is dressed like a Rebbe. And Razor says to his brother, Rebbe Rashab, younger brother, Vos is Aid? What is a Jew? What is a person? And the Rebbe Rashab says, as a child, he says, person is fire. Aid is fire. So the Razor grabs the Rebbe Rashab's arm and says, if you're fire, why don't I get burned? And he answered, when fire touches fire, it doesn't get burned. When matter touches fire, it gets burned. When fire touches fire, it doesn't get burned. So it's really an understanding of different dimensions of reality. Now, this does not take away from the pain and the loss, because we want it in this world. We don't want to just hear the soul is living on. We want them together. We want the cup and the water. We want the energy and the matter. That's why we say every day in davening, Chayim Mesim. The Chayim Mesim sounds miraculous. You know what it is? It's actually not miraculous. That when you will fix the punctures, then there's no reason that the soul should have to ever leave the body. So actually, Tches HaMesim, which is just bringing back things to their natural order. Soul and body forever. This is the science, the dynamics, if you wish, the Kabbalah, the Chassidus of eternal life. First time you hear it, it sounds, wow, that's interesting. But think about it. So I once shared this at a conference, a medical conference. What was I doing at a medical conference? I'm not a doctor. I'm not the son of a doctor. They asked me to speak about medicine of the future. So I shared this idea, and I said, the medicine of the future, once the body has become realigned with its purpose, with its soul's mission, with the divine mission for which it was created, there will be no more illness, and there will be no more disease, and no more death. Simply because they can work, and they seamlessly work together forever. I finished my talk. It was a longer talk. I gave a lot of the details I shared earlier. Fellow gets up, a doctor, one of the hosts. So what will happen with us doctors if no longer disease and illness and so on? And I could see it was like everybody laughed. So after the prerequisite joke that maybe that's why doctors take so much money for a long retirement, I said the following. I said, on the contrary, you will be doing something much greater than you're doing today. Instead of fighting the pain of disease, of illness, of all sorts, at that time, you will teach us the secrets, the divine secrets that are embedded in human physiology, in human biology, in chemistry, in every part of the body of human life. For my flesh I behold God. You see that godliness in the flesh in ways that the rest of us don't see. So you'll be teaching us divine secrets. Isn't that a far greater, far more pleasant job? And the astronomers will teach us the secrets through the stars and astronomy and the celestial bodies. The reaction, I must tell you, was unbelievable. I'm not saying this about myself. Something resonated, a standing ovation. They related to it. And many of them were skeptics, and many of them were not necessarily believers. Because when you think about it, it resonates. It resonates. That life does not end when a person dies, God forbid. Everything lives on. Even on a matter level, matter lives on in energy, but definitely on the soul level. And yet, and I say this to all of you gathered, to all of us, to the Fink family, to Mrs. Fink, this doesn't take away from the pain. I remember when I sat Shiva for my father, you don't remember much what people tell you, but I remember one thing. I remember a person saying that the loss of a loved one, a father, a husband, is like a hole in your heart and soul. It doesn't go away. And you keep falling into it, especially in the beginning. As time passes, what happens is the hole doesn't disappear. You learn to walk around it. You can always revisit it, and we don't need much to revisit. You think about the loved one, the one you could touch, the one you could talk to. How could that not tear a heart open? But we learn to walk around it. That doesn't mean avoiding it. It means you learn that it teaches you something deeper about life and death. And we learn the secrets that God told Job when Job said to God, Eov, the suffering Eov said, why do you allow so much human suffering? And one of the answers that God gives him, which is unbelievable, he says to him, were you there when I created it all to ask me such a question? There wasn't a rejection. He was teaching a tremendous lesson. You asked me why there's death. Did you ask me why there's birth? You asked me why life ends. Did you ask me why it begins? No, we always ask when it's not working or it's not pleasant. We rarely ask why I was born. Yeah, we may ask it, but not with that same intensity and urgency. Because the secrets of death are connected to the secrets of birth, and the secrets of the end are connected to the secrets of the beginning. And as I said earlier about Kaddish, that ultimately the ultimate answer is not some rational answer, or you know what, we'll build something in the memory of this person. That's all beautiful. Ultimately, there is immortality in each one of us, and immortality does not die. And it is us, the family, the children, friends, anyone, that takes it to heart and says, I will take that immortality and perpetuate it. The song, the melody continues to be played. And not only continues to be, it can be played even better and greater and wider and more expansive and with many new variations. That's the beauty of children. Every child has another part of that melody. Everyone expresses another part, not just of the genetic and hereditary features that we inherit from our parents, from our father, but also their spiritual legacy, which, as we've been hearing this evening, is tremendous. Rabbi Eliezer Gold was mentioning about the tzedakah of Shmuel, Rab Shmuel. Shmuel Yaakov, I should mention, because we're talking about Yaakov, Yechi Yaakov Lemes, Mazar B'chaim, Afu B'chaim. It brought to mind the following. When I repeated earlier the story with Rabbi Akiva and Kaddish, I intentionally did not tell all the details because I was speaking on the focus and I realized that was a mistake. I should have shared one more detail. What was the detail? Rabbi Akiva asked that man covered in charcoal black, that suffering man, the man who was collecting the wood and wasn't redeemed until his son said Kaddish. He asked him, what did you do in this world that you deserve such punishment? And he answered, I was a tax collector. And I favored the rich, and I persecuted the poor. In absolute contrast, Rab Shmuel, the Bala Yochid of today, was exact opposite. I'm not saying he persecuted the wealthy. I hope not, but he respected the poor. And poor doesn't just mean a poor person; it means needs. A person who loved to give tzedakah. There's his natural love. So you can imagine how much more so what Kaddish does for his neshama. And it's just an interesting thing. That's the thing that it says in the Midrash. Of all things, of all sins, that one. Now we can explain why that. Aren't there much worse things? But there's something about it. And it was his son that redeemed him. Now, thank God, we're not dealing with a person covered in charcoal and black. We're not dealing with a person who did anything of that nature, and quite the contrary. So the Kaddish, Yiskadli v'Yiskada Shmei Rabbah, which is about the exaltation and the hallowing of God's name, and how God will redeem us, Yatzmach Perkone V'Karev Mishiche, and all the other details of Kaddish for a man, for an neshama, like Rab Shmuel. That means it's elevating his neshama to higher and higher levels. As the Rebbe explains in the talk I mentioned earlier, I repeat it again because it's worthwhile looking at. This week's Pasha Shmois, Tov Shin Mem Tes, 31 years ago, talking about the end of Kaddish for the Rebbe Tzachai Mushka. And he says there, the same Kaddish we say, even on the most cruel, wicked person, we say also for a tzaddik. We're all the same Kaddish. Because it teaches us that everybody can be redeemed, but most importantly, that ultimately real Kaddish is not about just cleaning the dust. It's about elevation. It's about sanctifying and connecting the immortal neshama with the source of life, God himself. So, in the complete equation of things, when you think about it, V'achayit Nalibe tells us the lesson that we need to derive from all of this. The lesson we need to derive is one that is personal. Is personal. Each one of you, and I say this specifically to the Fink family, the beautiful Fink family. When I get back to New York, I'm going to make an effort to meet each one of you. You are carriers of eternity. What I hear about your father, and just the little we hear, is beyond words. You are the carriers of that. And you have the power to continue the song in an even greater way. Now some will say, greater? My father was so great. Greater means your unique way. We're not just here to gather and honor a neshama. That's not just what a yahrzeit is. It's about hachlotas tevis. It's about resolutions. Because one thing Jews always knew, it's not what happens today. It's what happens forever. When Avram said that, when Avram committed his life to family and children, as opposed to all the great leaders who did not have the time for family and children, he understood that it's not about that day, it's about forever and ever. And think about it. The promise made to Avram Avinu, that one day your children will be spread all over the world like the stars in heaven, was fulfilled. We are those stars. And those stars continue to shine. And despite everything we've gone through, and we've gone through much, the Jewish people, collectively and individually, and despite our many questions, and we have many, why God makes certain decisions, why he takes some people at one point in life, others at another point, and we all know the biggest question of all, things like the Holocaust. I shouldn't even say things, it's not the right word to say. We don't have answers, but we have the strength to forge ahead, and we will not be defined by our suffering and by our questions. We'll be defined by the legacies we build, and we perpetuate and we continue. And at a time like this, yes, when there's a crack, that's how the light gets in. Times like this, when we're not in our comfort zone, when we're not just cruising along and everything is nice, and those are the times that usually we just take things for granted. At times like this, we look into the deeper truths of life. V'achayit nelibe. What does chayis really mean? What does life really mean? And the Rebbe showed us the path. That year, Tov Shemem Ches, entire year, study it. You'll be amazed of what kind of lessons we learn, what kind of power we can glean from it. This is what we have, and especially as Chassidim. We have the Torah, but we have Chassidus. What does Chassidus teach? About Divrei Lekim Chayim, the living words of God. That's what a mimer is. It teaches us what is Elokus, what is godliness, what is eternity. We live in a world where everything is mortal, everything is temporary and impermanent. We learn what is eternity, and eternity is beating right now inside each one of us. And your dear husband and father, Rab Shmuel, is right here with all of us, feeling and experiencing everything we're experiencing it. And partaking in our joys as well as feeling the pain when we have pain. When people ask, does that soul have pain? Only when we have pain. Because the soul sees things in a bigger bird's eye view, sees the bigger picture. It wants to reunite with its loved ones, and it prays to do so. But it's not in pain because it sees, even though we don't see. It's like we don't see behind the curtain, but that which is behind the curtain sees us. So think about it. The neshama of your father, the neshama of your husband is looking right now at all the friends gathered, at all of us gathered, wherever we may be, and smiling in some ways, and also hoping that we will do our part. We will do our part to embody, perpetuate. And the Rebbe made it very clear that this journey is not another marathon. We're already at the end of the marathon. Many legs that we've gone through, we're now at the end of the journey toward Mashiach, toward Geula, toward Chis HaMesim, when the world will be realigned to its initial purpose. Just a few weeks will be Yud Shvat. 70 years we're honoring and celebrating the Rebbe's leadership. And what was the Rebbe's message in the first mission statement he declared? That we are it, now it's all dependent on us. All that was done till now may be a lot greater, that we're like the midgets that stand on the shoulders of giants. The Rebbe didn't mention that there, but the idea. And it's dependent on us because we will take it to the finish line. We are the seventh generation, not necessarily with our choice, not through our work, not always was something we wanted, but we are that seventh generation. And we will bring, like Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Shekhinah back to earth, we will bring the Shekhinah back to earth this time in a permanent way. Because all the thousands, the tens of thousands, the millions, the billions, I can say, and perhaps trillions of mitzvahs, of good deeds, and sacrifices, and Mesiras Nefesh Mamish, that everybody gathered here has a parent, a grandparent, a great-grandparent. Somewhere you'll find someone that sacrificed their life, and perhaps much more than once. All that, what happened to all that? Where are all those good deeds? We know a mitzvah never dies. Good deeds don't die. Sacrifices. So if you ask the doctor, if you ask the scientist, they'll tell you, hey, you know what? It's gone. People die. It's over with. The cynics say, they put on the tombstone, they say, here lies someone who thought he was indispensable, irreplaceable. That's not how we see it. There's no such thing. We see that everything they did was like a building block that's stored forever. The example Chassidus gives for it, like in a chest. Munach b'kufsa. It's placed in a chest, in a treasure chest. And it accumulates and accumulates and accumulates over the thousands of years. And then comes the moment when it's ready to erupt. And that's what the Rebbe says. We're at that stage. All that was done has accumulated. The building blocks are in place. We need that one tipping point, that one act, that one good deed. And that's why we're gathered here. Because that good deed is lying in the hands right now of us, family, friends of Reb Shmuel. This does not take away the responsibility from anyone else, but we have to look at ourselves, and that tipping point, with the absolute promise of the Nasi of our generation, that you do your part, it will happen. Open your eyes. What does open your eyes mean? We have physical eyes open, but as the Rebbe once said to someone, that by his Farbrengen, some people sleep with their eyes closed and some sleep with their eyes open. You can have your eyes open and not see anything. Anayim ve'elehem v'lo yiro. They have eyes, but they don't see. To see the soul, to see the divine, to see providence, to see the miracles, to see the extraordinary within the ordinary, and act upon it. And not buy into the skeptical attitude that the more things change, the more they stay the same. No, to be a pioneer, to defy the odds, to be a nonconformist, and say, yes, we can change things. And we've been promised in the Torah by all the greats, and we've seen that they did their part, and we're standing here today. And finally, the promise of the Rebbe, that we do this in the Deir HaShvi, we will finish the job. We'll finish the job. Now, we may have many questions. People have questions about this, about that. Questions go on forever. That should never take away from the action that needs to be done. When soldiers are on the front lines, they may have questions, but they cannot stop fighting the battle. And in this case, it's a spiritual battle, thank God. So Hashem should bless you all, Mrs. Fink, all the Fink children, extended family, all friends, all of us gathered here, you should have the strength, the fortitude, the vision to forge ahead and finish the job. Rab Shmuel is now, together with the greatest neshamas, watching us. One thing they cannot do that we can do is we have arms and legs. We can make and effectuate change in this material world. We do it with their strength, but we can do it. And though the inspiration of this evening, everyone goes back to their lives, I wish and pray that we can all hold on to this moment and bottle it and perpetuate it. Turn it into a force. Turn it into a movement. The people you speak to, your sphere of influence, bring it home, bring it to life. And the best way possible is to learn Chassidus and to implement and live it. Because it teaches us exactly what Mashiach is. The soul of things. Not just the mechanics. The soul, the passion. God should bless you. You should be consoled. You should always have the strength. And I'm sure Shmuel is giving you strength. And we should all learn from this. And finally finish the job. And we should be zeicha and merit. Now, even tonight, to the Geula Amitis Vashlema, when the world will be aligned, Basi Legani Achesi Kala. Doesn't say Legnuni, it's Legani, not Legnuni. To the bridal chamber. Doesn't say Legan, to my garden, to the place where I was in the beginning. Iker Shechina B'Tachteinim, the Shechina rested on this earth. And then it was concealed due to the misalignment. To the realignment, and we have now Gani, the Shechina, this time permanently, as the Rebbe says in the Maimer, Iker Shechina B'Tachteinim, permanently with the Geula Amitis Vashlema, and merit to see and reunite with the Rabbi Shmuel in a neshama beguf, with all the tzaddikim, with all the great people, and of course with the Rebbe leading the way. V'niske zenzach ben Rebbe and Dala Mata Masaret Tfachim. Begula Amitis Vashlema. Thank you very much.